Okay, so before we start, just wanted to announce, I'll announce it next week also, but we will not be meeting next week on Monday, which is President's Day, and then God willing, we'll resume the Monday after that. All right, we're up to Mishlei 1624. Tsuf Devash Imre Noam, Matok La Nefesh Umarpe La'atzem. Yeah. So as you can see here, tsuf is a comb, or specifically a honeycomb, and tsuf devash is a comb, like honey from the comb or a comb exuding honey. So who wants to try translating? Well, it's either Isaiah or Ayala.
Um,
Yeah.
so honey, so right, the comb of honey, are are te are words are like consoling words, soft words,
Not nachim, noam, ne'ima,
pleasant words.
pleasant words. Yeah. So how
Right.
would we do this? Because comb of honey is singular and Imre Noam is plural. So
Oh,
I guess
interesting.
is statements of pleasantness. And I'm saying statements of why can't I spell this pleasantness? Because I think Imre Noam is pleasant. Noam is a noun, I think. So it's not amarim ni'imim. It's Imre Noam, statements of pleasantness. Matok lanefesh umarpe la'atzam.
Sweet to the soul and healing to the bone.
Yeah. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of the translation, but not as much as we would think. Okay, why? Because Metzus Tion, first of all, says Tzuf Dvash, Chalos Dvash, Plain Vinofes Tzufim. I think it means like the drippings of the honeycomb. I think it's what he means by Chalos. I'm not exactly sure. Now, La'atzem, he says, Rotzlam Laguf. So he says it means to the body. Okay. Ki ha'atzmos him ma'amide haguf, because the body, sorry, the bones are the like support of the body. All right. And so I like to remind people, I think when we use the term like la'atzmo so much that we forget that, and la'atzmo means to the self. We forget that atmo literally means to the bone. And so etzem can be used to refer to like the very self, but like the body. Okay, so that is the Mitzvah Tzion. Sadigon translates it. So he says, "Kimuvchar shebedavash imre hachachma." So he's going to translate. He's going to really like spell stuff out here. So he says, like the highest, or like the best, choicest, like the choicest honey, um, is statements of wisdom. Matok lenefesh, sweet to the soul, umar pelaguf, and healing to the body. And then second here, just make this smaller. Rav Kafach, who's the translator here, says Vine Tzuf Hamuvchar. Tzuf means the best. Plain Tirgum Tehillim, Venefes Tzufim Hamuvchar Shabbenofes. V'noam hi hachachma. So pleasantness, he's saying is chachma, and etzem is kvan leguf, and etzem means the body. Okay, fine. So that's similar to that. Okay, now I started doing this in the morning Mishlei last week, and I found that it seems to work pretty well. If you just ask ChatGPT to translate this Aramaic, I think it'll automatically figure out that it's Mishlei, and then I think it'll just go with the translation of Mishlei. But if you ask it, break down each of the Aramaic words and translate them individually and note any grammatical nuances, then it'll give you something like this. So kavarisa deduvsha. So kavarisa. So this ChatGPT theorizes seems to be an Aramaic word relating to the Hebrew kavara, meaning sieve or filter. It can also mean refinement or purification. So I would say like the refined duvsha, honey. All right. Ma'amara devusma, a statement of spice. Okay, a fragrant statement. Is a fragrant statement. I mean, obviously that's an analogy to a pleasant statement. Now this part I don't know. This is what I was looking up just now. Chaliusa denafsha. So it says chaliusa can mean illness or weakness. Now I don't know if this is an Aramaic phrase, but there's a memory I have in yeshiva, not a very good memory for the person, but there would sometimes be, in the old yeshiva building, then there would be like actually, I'm trying to think when this was. It must have been on a Shabbos. Oh, I know what it was. There was a kiddush in the basement, and it must have been a kiddush where there were like people from outside of the community, because there was this woman who we didn't know, and she was in the main kitchen opening refrigerators and just taking food out and giving it to her kid. Now, this is our private food, so one of the guys in the dorm said, "Excuse me, like, ma'am, like, that's our food. You can't just take our food." And the expression she used, and this was the first time I had ever heard the expression, she said, "But my son, he's chalishing for some food." Now, chalish literally means weak. So, but the way she was using it, he's weakening for some food, must mean like he's like, I don't know, like he's famished. So it might mean like, this is a total guess here, that if chalyusa means weak, it means like it's, I'm trying to think of a way to say it. Like, how would you say it's sweet, but like to die for, maybe?
It's a
Like, like
temptation.
people say in English.
Is it temptation that we're talking about?
But how do you convey the word sweet and weak? That's what I'm trying to look for here. So it's you know it's to die for. I don't know. For this, in terms of the soul, va'asuta lagarme, and healing for the bones, and healing for the bones. Okay, so the main difference here is he's saying that it's a fragrant statement. Ma'amara de busma. Okay, so whatever you want to make of that. Okay, then we have Art Scroll, and the rest of them pretty much say the way we. Or sorry, no. Art Scroll says words of pleasantness are a honeycomb, and sweet to the soul and healing to the bone. Refers as pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. Now, Alter says something that I've seen him say a lot, and this is the first day I've actually researched it. Okay, so he says pleasant sayings are honeycomb, sweet to the palate and healing to the bones. Now he says sweet to the palate. So if you see that, it was nefesh means soul, right? So he says this a lot. He says sweet to the palate. The literal sense of the Hebrew noun nefesh in this context is throat. And I've seen him say this a ton, and I never know where he gets it from, because I would never translate nefesh as throat. So I decided to ask a bunch of people online whether this is just a Robert Alter thing or whether there's any basis. So someone pointed me to the fact that the Ugaritic word napishtu, is Ugaritic, meaning like it was a language that was around at the time of Hebrew or earlier. Napishtu means life, vigor, vitality, good health, living beings, person, someone, somebody, capital case. But one of these is throat or neck. Okay, so then I was wondering, okay, fine, so that's Ugaritic, but what about Hebrew? So people pointed me to this pasuk in Yona, where Yona's talking about when he went down to the sea, and he says, "Afafuni mayim." This is Yona 2:6. "Afafuni mayim ad nefesh." Water encompassed me to my soul. To whom Yisovaveni, suf chavush l'roshi. The depths surrounded me, reeds wrapped around my head. So Neima Novetsky, in her commentary here, says Stephen Ezra and Radak and others that the connotation is so that I was close to death. Alternatively, to my neck, meaning it might not, nefesh might mean neck. Understanding nefesh related to the Akkadian napishtu, neck or throat. It is possible that the concrete understanding was the original meaning of nefesh, and that it was only later that it gained secondary connotations, metaphorically referring to a life source, the seat of appetite, emotion or desire, or man himself. So that is really where Alter's getting it from, that nefesh originally meant throat, and then secondarily came to mean soul or life or being. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add that sweet to the soul or to the palate. Okay, I know palate's not the same thing as throat. Okay, fine. So there is that, and Art Scroll is pretty much the same, so we can ignore this. And let's move these up, and then I'll copy and paste this into the chat, and then we can start our analysis. Okay, so we've got this in the chat, and then we've got these three. Okay, what are the questions here? Yeah, Ayala?
What are Imrenon, or what is Imrenon?
What are statements of pleasantness? What kind of statements, and in what sense are they pleasant? Yeah, Alex?
What's the context? And I'm just curious in terms of the, like, broader sense? Is this a metaphor? Is there something literal we're supposed to take from it?
Yeah, right. Okay. Let's see how we're gonna translate. Yeah, let's say like, what about this is metaphorical? What is idiomatic? And what is literal? And I'm saying what is idiomatic because even though idioms are often not literal, I classify idioms as different than metaphors. So for example, like if someone says it's raining cats and dogs, it's not like they're trying to convey a metaphorical idea. No, that's just an idiom that we have in our language. So I don't know what aspects are idiomatic. Yeah. Next is my dad.
And my thoughts were along the same line. It's so unfamiliar to see a pasuk in Mishlei that has this much metaphorical references to it.
Yeah, certainly the part of Mishnah that we learn. Yeah, I'm trying to think if we could break this down further. We'll keep the question broad like this for now, but I think it's a good observation. Yeah, Isaiah?
Is this whole phenomenon being described, is it a good thing that the statements of pleasantness have all these qualities, or is it a bad thing?
Okay, I'll ask that. It seems to be good. It feels good, definitely, but I guess we'll ask that. Is is the implication that these are good qualities? And if so, how? Yeah, Ayala?
What are the differences between all of these? Like
Right.
it just sounds like it's saying that it's good. So I guess what's the difference between the soul, the bone, the body?
Yeah, okay. So I actually do want to break that down to more specific questions here. So what is meant by nefesh? In this context. I'm gonna go ahead and put the translation nefesh, soul and palate, and then healing to the etzem. I know it says atzem, but that's just from the way that it is in the pasuk. Right. So what's meant by nefesh in this context? And what does sweet to the nefesh mean? Which will obviously differ if you say nefesh means palate, then versus soul. Okay. And then what does etzem mean in this context? And then in what sense is this healing? Now, I do want to just make this point because and treat this as a fact rather than as an idea, because I just wrote about this recently, that in Hebrew the word heal does not necessarily mean that you are sick. Okay. And the proof, or the place where I saw this, was in last week's parsha, which is at the end of chapter 15. No, yeah, at the end of chapter 15. Vayomer 15:26. Vayomer im shamoa tishma l'kol Hashem l'kacha. He said, if you will surely heed the voice of Hashem your God, v'hayashar beinav ta'asen, you'll do what is upright in his eyes, v'hazanta l'mitzvosav, and you'll listen to his mitzvos, v'shamarta kol chukav, and you keep all of his statutes. Kol hamachala asher samti v'mitzrayim lo asim alecha. All of the disease that I placed upon Egypt, lo asim alecha, I will not place upon you, ki ani Hashem rofecha, because I'm Hashem your healer. So Avram ben Rambam and Sadigon both say that the fact that God is saying, I will not make you sick, I am your healer, shows that healing could also refer to preventing disease, not to necessarily curing disease. And I mentioned in my post that that's why after we go to the bathroom, we say the bracha of Rofei chol basar ma'afli lasos, who heals all flesh and acts wondrously. Clearly, it's not like we hold that anytime you go to the bathroom, then that means you've had a disease. But rather in the bracha, it says that if any one of your orifices gets blocked, then you would not be able to survive. So we're talking about God as a healer because he allows the body to function smoothly without impediments or without problems. So healing here does not necessarily mean, I'll just say note, healing does not necessarily imply disease, but could also refer to preventing disease through smooth or normal functioning. Okay. Yeah, Ayala?
What is the relationship between the two halves of the pasuk?
Yeah. What is the relationship between the two halves of the pasuk? Now, this is the type of thing where we'll see this in some of the meforshim here, but I'm going to say this now just because I think that this is important. I think they did believe that honey had healing properties. Okay, that it wasn't just sweet, but it did have medicinal properties. And some people believe that today. Having grown up with a grandfather who was a beekeeper who believed, I don't know if anyone has ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the father believed that Windex was the cure for everything. But my grandfather believed that honey was the cure for everything. And, we would get sick, he would give us honey. We would scrape our knees, he'd put honey on it when, everything was honey. So I think that is probably a carryover from ancient times. I mean, I think that was what they believed then.
Well, Yonatan in Sefer Shmuel.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I forgot about that.
He had a honey and it rejuvenated him.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
Yep. Okay. What else? I do want to just remind us of the context, by the way. I don't know, when Alex asked her a question, she was asking, I listed it as the decision-making context. That's what I thought that she meant. But let's refresh our memories about the psukim that surround this. So the last couple of psukim we did were about speech. We had starting with 21. L'chacham levi karei navon u'mesek esofosayim yosef lekach. To the wise of heart, he will be called understanding, and sweetness of lips will increase learning or teaching. Then makor chaim seichel ba'alav. The intellect is a source or wellspring of life to its possessors. U'musar evilim ivelas. But the discipline of fools is folly. Then last week, leiv chacham yaskil pihu. The heart or mind of a wise person will make his mouth intelligent. Ve'al sefasav Yosef lekach, and on his lips he will increase knowledge or learning. And then we have our pasuk. Yeah, so that's the context. Yeah. Next is my dad.
I guess you answered this. I'm just wondering, how does this relate to the pasuk before and the pasuk after?
Right. Yeah. So I will list that question. Is this related to the surrounding psukim? So I didn't read the pasuk after, actually. So the pasuk afterwards is, I think, it's a classic one. Yeah. Yesh derech yashar lifnei ish v'acharisa darchei maves. There is a path that is straight or upright before a man, but its end is ways of death. So not as overtly related to the next one, but certainly seems to be related to the previous ones because it's about the mouth and statements and Chochmah, which also supports Sadigon's reading that this is about Chochmah. Okay. Let's read our usual, or ask our usual question of who is the intended audience. And I'm going to add, because of the context we just read, is this specifically for the Chachamim that the last psukim were about? And then I think Alex actually did ask this, is like, what is the practical application? Yeah, Ayala?
I don't think we asked, but like, I guess, what is that idea of a comb of honey? Like, what's
Yeah, right. We didn't ask that. Yeah, what is the? Yeah, by the way, a lot of the meforshim, I'm not gonna go and read them here. A lot of the meforshim, the only thing they say is that you should put a kaf in here, because it technically doesn't say that it is like statements of or like honeycomb, but I think we all agree that it's not saying that statements of pleasantness are a honeycomb. It's and this is a common metaphorical thing. So what is the honeycomb metaphor? Yeah. Oh, also just speaking, just again, going from childhood memories of my beekeeper grandfather. I don't know how many of you have tried honey from a honeycomb, but it is like extremely sweet, straight from the comb. And the way I would describe it. I mean, I obviously haven't had honey from a honeycomb in a while, but like it feels like the sweetness is electric. Like it is. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. Like your teeth are abuzz with sweetness. You can feel it in your teeth, not just on your tongue, which that's my memory anyway. So it's like extremely sweet. Okay. I think we also have to ask, maybe arguably this is part of it, but I'll ask it here then. What makes this sweet to the nefesh and healing to the etzem? Actually, no, this is a separate question here. Yeah, okay, this actually is part of Alex's question. is the sweet to the nefesh and healing to the etzem part of the metaphor? I guess part of the, let's say, part of the mushal or part of the nimshal? And then I guess we'll say, how does this work? How does this work? Okay, I'm going to start moving the questions. Questions ended up being short in words this time, interestingly enough. I think we can fit 7. 1 through 7. Here is 8. Change all these. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, so let's take our thinking minute here. I'm actually going to add this here also. On question 3, what are statements of pleasantness? I guess the question is, and once we know what this refers to, okay, for example, statements of wisdom, why call them statements of pleasantness?
Is it unanimously statements of wisdom?
It's not unanimously, that's why I'm just saying e.g. I would say that it's a high probability given the previous pasukim, which all seem to be about statements of Chochmah, but not it doesn't have to be. Okay, anyone got anything? Oh, another question I have here is like, it's common for Mishlei to metaphorically compare two things, but is this equating statements of pleasantness with honeycomb, or is it implying that they're better? It feels like it's saying it's better, but maybe it's just comparing it. I'll go ahead.
Okay, definitely not a full idea, but just start of a thought is the difference between like healing to the or sweet to the nefesh and healing to the body. I was thinking that like sweet to the nefesh is like upon immediate contact, it's like sweet and like positive effects, I guess.
Okay.
Versus healing to the body is like that's not immediate, but like over the long run, it will continuously like
Ooh, I like that.
I guess cause well-being and health.
Okay. Immediately discernible and beneficial in that regard. Whereas healing to the body is something that is beneficial, but not detectable in the present. I like that. Okay, so I mean, I assume that you're thinking of Chochmah when you say this. I mean, I don't know if you're, yeah, right. So, so too, Chochmah, is the type of good which is enjoyable in the short term and in the long run, right? Meaning that there are a lot of things in life that are good for you, but they don't feel good when you're doing them. And then there's other things that, obviously, lots of other things that are pleasurable in the immediate, but are not good in the long run. Chochmah is both. Right. Okay, so now I like that as a good idea. I'm sure there are going to be meforshim who say stuff like that. So now the question is, can we get more out of the first half? Like, certainly the thing we get out of it is, again, if you believe that honey is is medicinal and pleasurable. So then that's the basis. But I'm still curious about why highlight Imre Noam. Yeah, Ayala?
Just thinking out loud
Yeah.
that, like, I guess not necessarily all Chochmah will be received as sweetness if it's given over in like a harsh or like critical or I don't know, other way, but it has to be specifically given over with Noam.
Okay, that's good. So I actually want to take that and then just go one step further, which is that I'll add this to the end. Okay, so however, there's a condition. Okay, Chochmah will not inherently have this effect. Okay, unless it is presented as statements of pleasantness. Okay, so that's what Ayala was saying, and maybe you were saying this also, but not only will it not be sweet, but it won't even be medicinal, right? So that's an important thing, because I do think that there are teachers or parents who get into the mentality where like this is not enjoyable, but it's good for you. So I'm gonna force feed you the Chochmah, but it's not going to be good for you, or there's a chance that it's not going to be good for you if it's not pleasant. Meaning it'll just be rejected, or it just won't be internalized, or it'll become associated with negativity. So I think this is one practical application. I'll just put this practical application. Practical application number one, at least, is this is directed at teachers who don't sufficiently realize how important it is to make Chochmah, to deliver Chochmah pleasantly. Okay, they may justify this saying, like, well, it's still Torah, so it's still beneficial. But that's not true. Okay, not only will they fail to provide a sweet experience for students, but they might cause the student to reject the Chochmah or relate to it improperly. I have an anecdote to share after this. Yeah, Alex?
I think it's also worth adding the metaphor of the honeycomb itself. Like, honeycomb is something that takes a lot of time for bees to create, and they have to work together as a team to make it happen. So I think there's something to be said with this idea in terms of like the way in which you construct how you present this Chochmah needs time and effort to be constructed correctly.
Okay, I like that. Just like the bees need to work together over time to produce this honeycomb, so too with the formation of Chochmah. Yeah. I had so it's funny, this sheds a new light on the experience I have or I had today. So I was learning with a student, a high school student, and we decided to do Pirkei Avos. And I said, it was the first time we learned Pirkei Avos. I said, "Do you know what Pirkei Avos is about?" And he said, "All I know is that you get candy when you learn it." And I said, what are you talking about? He said, when I was a really little kid, then there was like some program where like, at shul that we did Pirkei Avos, and like I would go there for the candy, So when I heard this, I was thinking, my thought was, like, okay, I get why they did candy, but it's too bad because all the kid remembered was the candy, and he didn't remember. I said, "Do you remember anything about the content at all?" He said, "No." So I thought that was bad, but I'm seeing from this, I mean, you could think of so many other situations where that same experience with that same Torah would have been negative. At least in this way, his associations with Pirkei Avos were positive, and yeah, it's obviously not ideal that he didn't get didn't remember anything from it, but like it's definitely better than nothing. Yeah. Also, like, I'll tell you another application of this. I was talking with someone who was an accountant and said that because he had been involved in giving shiurim, then he had developed, even though he hated public speaking, he had developed some public speaking stuff. So he went to a conference and didn't know that basically there was someone who was like scouting out for like accountants for a certain purpose. So he said 2 accountants got up one after the other and gave presentations they said were the most horrendously delivered, dry, boring presentations ever. And then he got up, gave an equally dry presentation content-wise, but because he was used to giving shiur, he was good at delivering it. And he said that this person like hired him and gave him something like the same job that like was done by the boss that he had previously had or something like that, And so the delivery, I think it's my point is that I think that there are people who are very knowledgeable in Torah and they don't bother to work on the delivery, and I think they must think to themselves, either like my audience is going to relate to it the way I do, where like for me, dry Torah is enough, and so for them it's going to be enough, or they feel like, well, it's Torah, so like it's valuable no matter what, or they're not even thinking about the audience. But the point is that they have to make it sweet, And what's the greatest, what's the greatest, not greatest, what is a good proof that we are very familiar with that the words of Torah are like need to be sweet? Where are we most familiar with that from, that notion? Every day, what do we say? In the brachos, we say on Torah.
Harevna?
Yeah, harevna, right? We say, let me just get the brachos of the Torah here. Actually, I don't know where it is here. Is it going to be in Harev? No. There we go. V'harevna. Make v'harevna ad Hashem Elokeinu es divei Torah b'finu u'fios amcha beis Yisrael. Make pleasant or sweet. How do they say it here? Make sweet. Okay, fine. Yeah, make sweet. That's plain Pshat. Make sweet, Hashem our God, the words of Torah in our mouths and the mouths of your people, the house of Israel. So we say that in the Birchas Torah because if it's not sweet, it's not going to stick like honey. Yeah, Ayala.
Okay, just to I guess further flesh out this point.
Yeah.
What about like the Rav or the shiur, which were very intense and strict and very people were trembling walking into shiur?
Right.
How do you think that fits into this?
That's a good question. Right. So that's actually a halacha. Let me just find it here. So it's interesting. It is a halacha not in the Torah itself, but in kavod of chachamim, in honoring chachamim. Where can I find it? Or yeah. So so the way the Rambam puts it is he says, so first he says, Harav wait, hold on a second. Limed? Harav shalimed v'lo hivino talmidim. If a Rav teaches something and the students don't understand, lo yichos alehem v'yirgas. He should not get angry and rage at them. Ela choser v'shona hadavar afilo kama pa'amim. He should go back and teach it even 1,000 times, or even many times. Ad she'yavino omek halacha, until they understand the depth of the halacha. And then similarly, lo yomar hatalmid hevanti v'luhu lo yehevin. The student should not say, "I understood," if he didn't understand. Ela choser v'shona afilo kama pa'amim. He should go back and ask even many times. Being kalas alav rabo v'ragas, and if the Rav gets angry at him and rages at him, yomar lo, he should say, Rebbe, Torahi, v'lilmod nitzarech, v'dati katzara. Rebbe, it is Torah, and I need to learn, and my mind is deficient. Then he says, Lo yeh talmid bosh mechaverav shalamdu mipam rishona o shnia v'hu lo lomad ela achar kama pamim. A student should not be ashamed from his friend who learned it the first time when or the second time, and he needs many times to learn it. Because if he's if he's embarrassed by this, then he'll go in and out of the base midrash without learning anything. Therefore, the early sages said an embarrassed person cannot learn and an impatient person cannot teach. Okay, now here's the part. When are we talking about? That's when the student does not understand, the students don't understand hadavar, the matter, because of its depth, or because of their insufficient minds. But if it is discernible to the Rav, if the Rav recognizes that they are lax in words of Torah, and they're lazy and lax or loose about them, and that's why they didn't understand, then the Rav is obligated to rage at the students and embarrass them in order to sharpen them. And regarding this, the sages said, "Zrok mara b'talmidim." So this literally means instill bitterness into your students. Let me just see how they translate it. 'Cause I had I think an opposite of honey translation. So I think zrok mara b'talmidim means I think it means like I think there's a word like bile or like gall, like there is a meaning. There's a okay, there's some term that implies like a bitter substance in their mouth, you know. So what I get from this, and I don't know if this is the only answer, Ayala, but what I get from this is the Torah itself should be pleasant and should be delivered pleasantly. That's one consideration. The other consideration is that there is kavod harav involved, you know, that the students need to have honor and reverence for their Rav, and the Rav has to hold a high standard and keep them in line, and there should be gentleness and patience if they don't understand because of their lack of ability. But if they're slacking off, he has to like be harsh with them and scare them and keep them on their toes, almost like in a militaristic way, you know. And so I do think that you're right in your intuition that there could be sometimes a contradiction between these things, and sometimes the Rav might go too far. You know, in Rav Soloveitchik's thing, there's anecdotes about how he went too far in certain cases, and then later on found the student and like kind of like went to the other extreme and like was very nice with them and comforting them and stuff. And so yeah, it's a balance. Like you know, I think there is a tension there. Yeah. I don't think there's a way to like give a formula to resolve it. Yeah, Ariel?
I have another approach.
Okay, before you do that, I want to read one thing. I just need to see where to find it. I think there is a drasha on Ha'azinu. I've only seen it quoted in the Me'iri. But it's on one of the opening pasukim. So Ha'azinu says, give ear, you heavens, and I will speak. Let the earth hear the words of my mouth. Ya'aruf kamatar likhi. I hate this translation. Ya'aruf kamatar likhi tizal kata imrasi. Kisirim alidesha v'chirevivim ale esev. Let me see how they translate this other part. Let's see. Let my doctrine drop. Okay. Let my teaching, lekach, we've had that word recently, drop like rain. Tizal katalim, my speech shall trickle like the dew. Kisirim ale desha, like droplets on tender grass. V'chirevivim ale esev, and like showers on the herbage, on the grasses. Okay, so let me just see if I can find this chazal. Sorry, hold on. I'm just skimming through these statements of Chazal here. Well, there's a lot of drushos. Okay, so the Meiri says, I don't think the Meiri is on here. The Meiri says that that basically if you're a Talmid Chacham who's pleasant with people, then you're like then you are. Oh yeah, I'm gonna butcher it. Never mind. Sorry. All right, false alarm. I mean, it's there. It's in the Meiri's Hakdama. I just don't have it right now. Yeah, Ariel, what's your other idea?
Okay, so I'm not gonna say that it has to do with like how you give over the Chochmah, but more as to it's like the Chochmah itself. Maybe I want to say that the comb of honey is, I want to say it's like the Torah, the Torah or Mishlei or a pool of knowledge,
Yeah.
And I want to say that those statements are in itself pleasant. And it's sweet to the nefesh because the nefesh, I think, desires Chochmah. It desires, anything that would, help it perfect itself. Whether you as an individual may like it or not, that's irrelevant because the nefesh itself needs it. It's necessary for its own perfection. And I think, that, when it comes to the etzem, the guf, I think that, the more you learn, the more you internalize something, it will affect your your body in the sense of like how you act or how you treat, relate to the Chochmah in your daily life.
All right, that part I can follow you up until that last part. Last part, I don't know if I'm not clear on what you're including in your understanding of the body or in what you're including in your interpretation of healing.
Well, healing the body, it just means that like the way I'm thinking about it is like, I don't know. Maybe I know I am. I think I'm still a little unclear on a specific stuff, but the way I see it is like if someone, abuses himself with, drinking alcohol or drugs, like it kind of like affects the body in a negative way. Right. But if you, I'm still missing a step. I'm trying to find that step in like, okay, you have this Chochmah which is good for your nefesh, and somehow or other, it does affect your gut in a positive way.
That's so I'll just spell out what I think is difficult about the question there is because, in certain other contexts, then you could say, let's say I'll give you another context. Rambam says that the Torah perfects you in two ways. Tikkun hanefesh and tikkun haguf. Okay, tikkun hanefesh is perfection of the soul, that's the intellect, and then tikkun haguf is perfection of the of midos and like your actions. All right, so there I get it, like in the way the Rambam's saying it. Here, the fact that it uses such a like concrete, like gross term of like the bone, it benefits your bones, does make it feel like it should have it's not just talking about like the normal internalization of Chochmah and how it affects your decision making. It feels like it feels like body, and the way that Ayala's interpretation gets around it, Ayala, I don't know if you know that you were doing this intentionally, but I think according to Ayala, the statement is about honey, because honey is medicinal and honey benefits you, and then you can, that's the mashal, and then the nimshal, you can say that like honey, it's enjoyable in the short run and beneficial in the long run. But there's nothing in Ayala's idea where we have to find a benefit for Chochmah in the body.
I have an answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I have an answer. Sorno. Psychological. It affects the gut.
Yeah.
You have a proper framework, your back problems will go away.
Okay. All right. So I'll go with it. I'll go with that premise. Okay. The more it will improve your physical health due to the mind-body relationship. Okay, so now my question is like, why emphasize such a secondary feature of knowledge? And you don't have to answer that. You could say, well, that's what the chiddush of the pasuk is. I'm just wondering though, like,
wait, can you explain the question?
My question is like, imagine if I told you, okay, imagine you had never come to YBT before, okay? And imagine if I said, I got to tell you, like you're going to love, you're going to gain so much from learning this yeshiva. Two benefits of this yeshiva. It is going to completely like enhance your mind it's so good, and your back pain's gonna go away. Like it might be true, but that's not like, I feel like if you're advertising Torah, it's just weird to focus on like healing to the bone. Now, that's not so much a question on you; it's really a question on the pasuk, you know. So, but and you are trying to address that. I just feel like we need a little bit more for that, you know.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, Ayla.
Can you say that like nefesh and body are, I don't know if this is not like a proper translation, but nefesh is just like the more like intellectual, spiritual, metaphysical sort of, and then the body just means like physicality, which like the body is the most physical thing. That's why.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. You could definitely say that. So I'll put this as an answer. I have another answer as well, which is similar. So one, you could say that that nefesh is just all the intellectual, metaphysical, spiritual stuff, and etzem is all the physical, bodily, emotional stuff, and the pasuk is just speaking, categorically. I was going to say something similar, which is that the emphasis is on the total organism, and so which is why it's speaking in binary what's the word I'm looking for? Not complement, whatever. Yeah, binary terms. Like this and that, like the the soul and the body. But not that the emphasis is on the body, but the emphasis is on you're made up of soul and body, which I think it gets to the same thing you were saying. Yeah. Yeah, my dad is next.
Yeah, this is a late question. Is there anything to be made of the fact that obtaining honey from a honeycomb is a dangerous?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'll add that to the questions.
Yeah.
Where do we say the honey? What honeycomb? Yeah, is the way that the honey is, I'll include Alex's here also, made or obtained part of the metaphor? Yeah, that's a good question. Do you have a thought of that, or just the question?
I'm working on it, but no, I
Yeah,
can't.
that's a good. I like the question. Yeah, Ella?
So another question I was thinking on Ariel's idea is like, I mean, maybe an extra detail is, what is the difference between sweet versus healing? Like, why does it use those two terms?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I don't know, like a start of thought I had
Yeah.
that maybe healing is also like restoring to like the just like equal playing field sort of. And like the body, you're just like kind of physical being. You're like, that's just like a baseline in order to get the sweet, which is Chochmah, which is like the level up for humans.
Okay. Baseline and sweet is the level up. Yeah. Yeah. This is part of what is difficult about this pasuk is like I feel like they had different feelings about honey than we do. And so I don't know, like I'm trying to think if there is those, like when we think of honey, I think we think of candy or sugar, and like that's just not the way that they thought of it, because it has this medicinal thing. So I'm trying to think, is there something that like that we have, like even fruit, like when people think of fruit, they're aware that it's healthy and that it also tastes good, but they don't think of it the same way as honey, because honey is like a really like a dessert like thing. I don't know. Okay, I think these are good ideas. Let's start looking at some meforshim here. I have not looked at them yet. Matsudas David, let's start with him. Tvash, Hamamtik Amarim B'ni'imus Rav, someone who sweetens his statements exceedingly. Hima Arevim L'Shamehim Kechalos Hadvash. They will be pleasurable to the listeners, like the drippings of a honeycomb. Mo'ilim lenefesh, beneficial to the soul, ulaguf, and to the body. Hibzeh yimshoch libos b'nei adam achar da'ato. For in this manner he will draw people after his opinion. Hein b'davar hamusar, hein b'davar hanitzrach. Whether in a matter of character improvement or in practicality. Okay, So this is where Ariel's question comes in handy, okay, which we did not ask. What is the subject of this pasuk? So according to both Ayala and Ariel, the subject is okay. So according to Ayala, the subject is really teaching or communicating Chochmah. According to Ariel, it's the nature of Chochmah. What is the subject according to the Metzudas David?
What does he mean by sweet and sustainment exceedingly?
Meaning, presumably if you make your statements really, pleasurable, palatable, appealing. I think Ayala is in the best position to answer this question.
Yeah, it sounds like her idea.
No,
Yeah,
I'm saying given a certain class that I taught her in. So the subject is rhetoric, okay, is the art of persuasion, okay. So it's true, it's similar to Ayala's idea in the sense that he's talking about like teaching, but Ayala was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ayala was talking or had in mind specifically Chochmah or Torah, not like getting your kids to take out the garbage, right? And might still be extend to that, but I think Ayala was talking about Chochmah. So the main idea here, and again, we got to develop this, but shot here is that that if you get into the habit of crafting your statements so that they appeal to the listeners. So I think maybe the chiddush here is all right, we'll start with what he's saying is they will become predisposed to following your opinion, and then you can speak to them. You can persuade them to do things which are beneficial for their own character or in other ways. Necessary in other ways. Okay, so the question is like, what's the chiddush? Okay, this is rhetoric 101, that you need to appeal to that you need pathos to appeal, i.e. to appeal to their emotions, right? So what is this teaching us?
Whatever works, it may not be pretty.
Isn't it supposed to be pretty? Isn't that what he's saying?
Maybe that's my point. Point is, if you're looking for that, you're not always going to find it here.
I'm just not understanding. Can you just explain a little bit more?
You're saying, let me give it some thought.
Okay, sure.
Maybe the chiddush is, I mean, it sounds a little manipulative, but
yeah, it is.
But it's I guess depending on how you use it, it's important to convey certain ideas, if it'll help people. So
right.
Maybe the chiddush is, look, you may seem like a bad guy doing this, but it doesn't really say that though.
No, right. Yeah, Alex?
It sounds like the focus is the greater good, focusing on the outcomes than the perception of how the methods are wrapped.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's I think what Ariel was alluding to as well, which is the it's manipulative, but it's for the good,
Yeah.
Yeah, Ayala?
I have a question on your, like, the way that you formulated the main
Yeah.
idea. Do you see in his language that he's saying that if you do it enough, enough times and it's sweet to them, then eventually you can say things which aren't necessarily sweet and pursue them to do things?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part. If you say it one more time.
I'm just like the part that you mentioned about they'll become predisposed to following your opinion, and then you can persuade them to do other things. To me, it sounds like he's just saying, like from his language, it sounds like he's just saying that like say things in like a, I don't know, way that comes across well, so they'll do them, but not necessarily that you'll develop a reputation.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if he's saying that or that's your point.
So I'm getting this out of two things. Hamamtik amarim b'ni'imus rav, one who sweetens, and the emphasis is on the person. Hamamtik, and then yimshok libos b'nei adam achar da'ato. He'll draw people to follow his opinion in divrei musar and chochmah. So in other words, if you just read our pasuk, it sounds like he's saying people will like. I think the temptation to say people will follow the statements, but he's saying they'll follow the sweetener and his opinion. So I think that's what the chiddush is. The chiddush is it's not a chiddush if you're talking about a particular statement, okay? But if this is the normal way you talk to people, okay, then in general they'll be predisposed to follow your advice. You know, in other words, I think there are certain people who will. I'm going to kind of like use a similar example to when I was talking about Ayala's idea. There are certain people who will just like talk normally and not really care about like crafting their statements for other people, but then when they really need someone to do something, they'll try to put in the effort to try to like make it seem appealing. You know, that might work if you're really good at doing that. But if you're the type of person who just generally speaks pleasantly with people and makes things frames things in ways that are for their self-interest, and you radiate this feeling of like, oh, you know, I care for you, you know, so then they will be drawn after your advice in general, and you'll be able to like they'll be willing to listen to you for that reason. Yeah, Ayala.
This reminds me of the podcast episode from Tim Ferriss. I forgot who the guys who interviewed about parenting. Where you were saying like if you develop a trusting relationship with your child, then like they're gonna see you as like a partner in helping them get what they want, and like develop their interests.
And they won't need to like
someone
manipulate you, or there won't be that unhealthy dynamic. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, Alex, is your hand up fresh, or is this a new leftover from last time? Okay, I sense that. Okay, yeah. So I think that's the chiddush here. So this is related practically to what Ayala was saying, but the difference is that Ayala's idea was more about Chochmah. This is more about how to make yourself into a persuasive person for the sake of maybe influencing them in Chochmah, but it's really more about your making them be able to listen to your opinion. And that's why he says also, bedavar hamusar o bedavar hanitzrach. What do you mean bedavar hanitzrach? Something that's I mean, literally in something necessary. Something necessary, so it's just like a weird state, like really like that's why I use the taking out the garbage example, like like you're persuading people in musar or taking out the garbage. Well, yeah, like if you want to be an Aisha Skyle is gonna not be bossing her kids around, she's gonna be speaking pleasantly in a way where her, like I was saying, like where her kids are gonna realize, oh, everything my mom is saying is in my best interest, and of course I'll be willing to do that. Okay, let's do Rביnu Yona, short Rביnu Yona. Kitsuf hadavash. Again, I haven't done this yet. Like drippings of honeycomb. Shematok lache chabrios, which are sweet to people's palate. Okay, this is like altar. Kain imre noam metukim lenefesh chacham. Oh, interesting. So too, words of pleasantness are sweet to the soul of the chacham, gam him marpe levarad, and are also healing to his limbs. Matok kol echad meimre noam. Each statement of pleasantness is, I can't type this today. Pleasantness is like that. I still can't do it. Pleasantness. Yeah. Like that. I think he's just bothered by the singular plural. O ye shem davar, or, oh, I see. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, he's saying, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah. He's just bothered grammatically. He's saying, pleasant words are sweet. Each one of the pleasant words is sweet, or statements of pleasantness. Okay. But the main point though is he's saying to I can't type today. Sweet to the soul of the Chacham. So this is different than Ariel. Okay. So Ariel was saying how it's sweet to every soul, right? And I actually was going to mention there. Did anyone know or remember Aristotle's Aristotle begins his statement in metaphysics with man by nature desires to know, and he brings a proof that human beings desire to know. It's an interesting proof. Anyone know that there's an innate human desire to know, to have knowledge, even without like benefit. So he says babies love looking at things. You know, he says babies delight in just getting information. And he says specifically the faculty of sight. And he says, and that lasts until like into adulthood also, is just looking at things is like the sense that's most connected to gaining knowledge, at least in the immediate. And so like that's an inherent part from the time that you're a baby, you know? So that's what Ariel's saying, and I agree with that. Rביno is taking a different direction, that's saying it's specifically sweet to the Chacham. So the question is, what do we get from here? Yeah, Isaiah?
I don't really understand what he's saying, because like he's just saying, it seems to me like what he's saying is that the words of pleasantness are sweet to the soul of a Chacham. But like I would think a Chacham would be someone who would be like seeing past the pleasantness of the words. If they were specific types of words that are like pleasant because they have a certain quality.
Oh, okay.
He's saying that they're words of pleasantness.
Yeah, I actually was assuming that he was going like side to go and saying that these are words of Chochmah. He doesn't say that, but that's what I think. I was also not even thinking about that I was, yeah, I think I was bothered by, if I thought about it, I would have been bothered by the same thing you're bothered by. I think he's talking about Chochmah though. Ariel?
I think I'm more inclined to Rביno Yona now. Yeah, because I think there's a difference in desiring knowledge versus knowledge being sweet to you. It's like, for instance, like if you're really thirsty, the water tastes sweeter than it actually is.
Yeah.
If you're not thirsty, it's just gonna taste like water. You don't really sense that. So I think the Chacham really hungers for knowledge and Chochmah, and for him it's gonna be sweet, and like it tastes better to him because he appreciates it more.
Yes. Okay. So I think both of what you and Rביno are saying are true, but I do want to spell out the difference a little bit. Like you're saying, is Ariel, unlike Ariel, who was talking about the inherent pleasure of knowledge to every soul. Okay. Rביno Yona is talking about the extreme pleasure experienced by the soul of a Chacham who yearns for Chochmah and gets it. Okay. So in other words, I think the example of Ariel's thing is like, I'm sure you've either had this experience or like or talked to people who like became interested in learning, where like they hear a certain kind of idea for the first time and they're like, I did not realize that I needed this. You know, I did not realize that like this is this enjoyable. Like for some people, it's like the first time they hear a svara in Gemara. For some people, it's the first time they hear Mishlei. For some people, it's the first time they get a good philosophical answer. You know, there's like, oh, I needed this. Now, that is what Ariel's talking about, that there is like the soul getting truth feels really good. Okay. But if you put that person in shiur or in yeshiva and you say, okay, sit down and learn, you know, they're not going to be able to like access the high level of pleasure that Rביno Yona is talking about. There's a pleasure, there's what happened? There is a level, I guess a heightened level of pleasure that needs to be cultivated and can only be experienced by a Chacham, you know? And I think that's what Rbyno Yona is talking about. And, you know, the application here, perhaps, I'm going to suggest one application is, you know, and I'm not saying that you're going to be able to sell this, but who was the philosopher? There's a philosopher who said, hold on. Okay, I've been trying to spread the word here, by the way. All right, commercial break. Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, was maybe a couple weeks ago interviewed by Barry Weiss on the Free Press, and she asked him, what is the biggest way that ChatGPT has changed your life? And he said, surprisingly, and this is when I learned about it, he said, I don't use Google anymore. I use ChatGPT search. Okay, so I did not know about ChatGPT search. So if you go on ChatGPT and you click on search, okay, then it will do this. So if I say, you ask the same way as you usually do, who was the philosopher who compared, the enjoyment of Socrates to the enjoyment of a pig and said that he'd rather be Socrates? So what it'll do is it will give you results and then it'll put the sources on the side so that you can go and access them. So it's way better than the Google AI search, which just like, I mean, I don't know if it's better, but like I like it better. So he says, the statement I was looking for was, it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. Mill, this is John Stuart Mill, emphasizes that those who have experienced both higher and lower forms of pleasure would prefer the former, even if accompanied by dissatisfaction. So I was thinking about that here also, is those, for those who haven't experienced the pleasure of Chochmah don't know what they're missing. Okay. Just like someone who hasn't, tried honeycomb drippings, can't imagine like such a superlative level of pleasure, and so the application is, it's worth cultivating that. Okay. So in other words, like, again, I'm not saying you can sell someone on this, but you go to a high school student and you say, oh, you know what, you're not into learning now, but if you get into learning, you're going to experience a joy and pleasure that's greater than anything. You might not sell them on that, but like, I think there is a certain developmental level where you, maybe starting with what Ariel was saying, where you sense the enjoyment that you can get from one shiur or one idea. And if you know that there's a level where that is what you'll turn to for enjoyment, and you'll be able to get that a lot, then that's an appealing thing. All right, I want to do one more. It's actually Ayala.
Just to add to that, I think
Sure.
also like watching Chachamim or being surrounded by Chachamim,
that's
like
good.
shows you that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I saw this in several places. I think I'll just read it from the meiri. Okay. Which is a different approach than the one that we're taking. He says, I'm just skipping this. Okay, so it says the drippings of a honeycomb. Oh no, sorry. Statements of pleasantness. Statements of pleasantness are like the drippings of a honeycomb, only better. Okay, why? Ki hadvash, because honey, mo'il umazik b'miktas, is beneficial, but also harmful. Okay, and yeah, I think because if you if you eat too much honey, then that's gonna be bad for you. Okay, v'zeh mar belakol, but this, i.e., statements of pleasantness, I'm gonna say chochmah here because I think that's what he's talking about, is healing to all. V'hadvash, and honey, harabos lo tov, eating a lot is not good. V'zeh, but Chochmah, whole och Yosef bo Yosef das. The more you indulge, the more knowledge you get. Vadvash matad lepeh. Honey is sweet to the palate. V'zeh matad leguf ulenefesh. But this is sweet to the body and the soul. Okay, he doesn't explain what that means. Ubam milas etzem b'mam guf. Eventually he says etzem means body. Okay, he says, and healing means that the Chochmah heals you of every bad character trait. Okay, so this is more of a like a list pasuk, is that he's saying that, like, if you compare Chochmah and honey, you'll just realize how much better Chochmah is. I think the main idea here, and I think Rabbi Chait talks about this in the proof of learning tape, which is let me just look this up here. Learning D4. I knew it was early on. D4 is idea, namely that if you compare Chochmah as a source of pleasure with other pleasurable things, then Chochmah will win out. Okay, and the actual place where this is discussed in Mishlei is in the earlier chapters, in chapter 3, I think. He says I think twice, but Yikara hi mipninim v'chol chavatzecha lo yeshuva. Chochmah is more precious than corals or precious jewels, and all your delights cannot compare to it, cannot equal it. So I don't know the particular idea he's getting here. I don't know if he's just saying that each of these is their own idea, or if he's just comparing them like in broad strokes. But that's another approach to take, is that the pleasure is superior. Okay, so let's review. This is a good haul here. Okay, so we had one idea, which is Ayala's, which is that when presenting Chochmah, don't think that it's going to speak for itself. Don't think that just because it's Torah, it has to be beneficial. It is only, obviously you should make it enjoyable, because enjoyable experiences are better than non-enjoyable experiences. But the chiddush is, if you don't make it enjoyable, it's not going to heal the body. Meaning it's not going to be, or sorry, it's not going to have the long-term benefit. Sorry, I skipped a step. Just like honey has a short-term benefit, and back then they thought a long-term benefit, so too Chochmah has a short-term pleasure and is beneficial in the long run, but it will not be that way unless you make it imrei noam, unless you make it sweet. And so that is primarily lessons to teachers about making sure that their students enjoy, that you present Torah in an enjoyable way. Ariel's initial idea was that soul is inherently sweet to the nefesh because nefesh desires Chochmah. And it's also beneficial to the goof, if we mean by goof all physical midos and, like, perfection that's not associated with the non-physical part of you. And similar to that, Rבינו Yona was saying that it's pleasurable to a chacham specifically, who has cultivated a taste for it. Chacham is an acquired taste in a certain way. And then the Metzudas David's idea is about persuasion, that if you regularly get into the habit of making your statements sweet, and you really think about the listeners, and you make sure that your statements are free from abrasiveness and insults and all this other stuff, so then they'll be more prone to following you, and then you'll be able to guide them in a way that's beneficial to them and to other people. Okay, smooth, went down smooth. Okay, next time we learn will be, I think, a different subject, not statements and Chochmah, but paths and death. Okay. So next week, no shiur, and Bli Neder will continue after that. Thank you for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.